In the heart of the woods, on a blustery day, young Maple the squirrel came out to play. Her tail was the fluffiest puff you could find. It bobbed when she bounced, and it trailed behind. It tickled the ferns, and it shimmered with pride as she skipped through the leaves with a giggly glide. She twirled and she twitched in a proud little prance, while her marvelous tail did a marvelous dance. A blustery gust gave a sudden loud wheeze, louder, in fact, than a bear's biggest sneeze. Maple wobbled and clutched her tail tight, but poof! Her dear Fluff took off into flight. It lifted like clouds on a breezy ballet, then twirled with a wiggle and whisked far away. She blinked in alarm as it danced through the blue and stretched out her paws, but the wind simply flew. The treetops all rustled, the branches leaned low, as the forest let out a collective soft "oh." She gasped and she darted, her paws in the blur, past crackling leaves and a moss-covered spur. The Fluff danced ahead like a giggling sprite, just out of reach, like a speck in the light. "Come back, you fuzzball," she shouted with glee, as her voice bounced off bark and flew through the tree. A crow flapped above with a chuckling cry, like it knew where the Fluff was about to fly. She leapt on a rock with her arms open wide, but the puff floated off like a feather on tide. She groaned and kept going, breath huffing in fast, determined to catch it, she'd do it at last. The wind took the Fluff and it flew out of view, past pine trees that stretched to the high sky of blue. Maple slowed down and slumped with a thud beside a cold tree and a patchwork of mud. She glanced at her tail, so skinny and bare, like a breadstick left out in the crisp autumn air. She shivered inside as her pride slipped away, while the forest just rustled with nothing to say. Maple crept softly behind a wide bush. Her heart gave a flutter, her steps made a hush. She crouched in the shade with her tail tucked in tight. "I can't let them see me, not looking quite right." Some squirrels played tag just a short skip away, their laughter like leaves on a breezy fall day. She peeked for a moment, then ducked back with speed, and pulled up a twig like a leafy green shield. Fern came a-trotting, his scarf all askew, tied sideways and bouncing in ribbons of blue. He sniffed at the breeze and gave a sly grin, then spotted young Maple curled quiet within. "Why are you hiding? Did your tail take a trip?" he asked with a tilt and a fox-like quip. Maple just twitched with a shrug and a blink, while Fern stepped in closer, too quick to rethink. His scarf ends bounced like two wagging tails, and his grin was as wide as the winding trails. Maple tried laughing, but sighed with a frown. "My tail lost its fluff, the wind blew it down." She pointed quite sadly, her voice barely heard, while Fern tapped his chin without saying a word. He squinted and nodded, all serious and slow, then dug through his scarf like a fox in the snow. "Emergency style?" he muttered inside, while Maple peeked out, still a little bit shy. With a glint in his eye and a foxworthy grin, Fern pulled out a leaf, red and silky and thin. "This fashion," he said, "is approved by a fox." He fluffed it and gave it some runway-style knocks. He tucked it in snug with a swish and a flare, and Maple's tail twirled through the crisp forest air. She giggled, it fluttered a bright glowing flag that danced like a cape or a fancy red rag. "You're ready to strut," Fern declared with a wink, "for a runway of roots near the old river's brink." Fern gave a wave and dashed out of sight, chasing a leaf with dramatic delight. He pounced and he tumbled, all giggles and speed, like that leaf owed him something, a debt or a deed. But Maple stayed hidden, still snug in her nook, though her tail with its leaf had a sunnier look. She gave it a wiggle, so quiet and small it whispered, "Cheer up," with no sound at all. The leaf brushed her fur with a shimmer so slight, and her heart felt a flicker of soft featherlight. Then Birch the owl swooped down through the air and landed quite softly with thoughtful old flair. His wide blinking eyes found a squirrel in the shade, where leaf light and shadows together had played. "Dear Maple," he asked with a curious tone, "why sit in the shadows, all quiet, alone?" She shuffled her paws but said not a thing, still holding the hush that the sadness could bring. "My tail's lost its puff," little Maple confessed. She pointed and sighed, a bit underdressed. Birch gave a glance at his feathers so wide, then fluffed them all up with a hoot full of pride. He nodded quite slowly, then dipped his fine wing and plucked out a feather, a soft, silken thing. Maple's eyes widened, her whiskers went still, at the gray, glowing plume held with gentle goodwill. "This feather is softer than marshmallow fluff," said Birch as he placed it with care and with puff. He tucked it in next to the leaf, neat and proud, while Maple's tail wiggled, she giggled aloud. It fluttered and flicked like a flag on parade, and Birch gave a nod at the look he had made. "So stylish, so cozy," he hooted with pride, as Maple's laugh rustled the bushes beside. Birch gave a hoot and flew into the night, off through the trees and out of her sight. "Snack time," she guessed, with a smile soft and wide, as moonbeams came dancing through branches beside. She peeked from the bush where she'd hidden before. Her tail felt much brighter than moments of yore. The feather and leaf gave a jubilant swish, like a party in secret, a fluttering wish. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The ground gave a shake, as Bramble stomped in with a porcupine quake. His quills shimmered bright in the moon's silver glow, like icicles marching in neat little rows. Maple peeked out from her leafy retreat, while paw prints appeared from his shuffling feet. He stopped at her hiding spot, gave a soft sniff, and twitched his small nose with a ponderous whiff. Bramble sniffed softly, a twitch and a grin, then nodded and motioned, "Come on, let's go in." Through roots of a tree and a doorway of round, they stepped into warmth where treasures abound. The sunlight was golden, the air rich and sweet, with baskets and acorns piled neat at their feet. Maple sat quietly, her tail brushed with red, a leaf and a feather now crowned on its head. Bramble bent slowly, his quills caught the light. Fern leaned in closer, her eyes shining bright. Bramble stepped close with a confident grin and tucked a sleek quill gently right in. "Now you're part porcupine, sharp and deluxe. Just keep yourself far from balloons and from ducks." Maple let out a snort full of cheer. She'd never made such a sound in her ear. The quill gave a shimmer, both shiny and stout. It felt rather grand, like a tail with some clout. Maple kept giggling. It tickled her side. Her tail felt so heavy, but full of new pride. She gave it a swish through the crisp autumn air and dreamed she could poke little holes everywhere. Bramble beamed proudly and gave her a cheer. "You're ready to march in a parade this year." As evening tiptoed through branches and breeze, Tilly came dashing with leaf cape with ease. She skidded to Maple and gave a small stare, then tilted her head with a chipmunky flare. "You look a bit chilly," she said with a peep. Her cheeks puffed like pillows she'd hidden to keep. She wiggled and grinned with a secret delight. Whatever she carried was tucked out of sight. Maple gave Tilly a thankful-eyed nod, who dipped 'neath her cape with a wriggle and prod. "A tuft of warm moss," she said with a beep. "It's tail soup, but moss with no soup and no deep." She pressed it in place with a ticklish pat, and Maple let out a giggle at that. It nestled in snug with a soft little puff. Now the tail felt cozy and full of good stuff. The moss tucked in with a gentle squeeze, a blanket of green from the forest trees. Maple swished once, then swished once more. Her tail felt warmer than ever before. The leaf gave a flutter, the feather a spin. The quill gave a wiggle, the moss tucked in. She smiled and sighed. What a marvelous trail of friendship stitched into one thankful tale. Her friends gathered round with a laugh and a cheer. To think that your tale holds the whole forest here. Fern gave a twirl, made his scarf fly about. It's a festival tale, he declared with a shout. Maple just giggled and gave it a swing. The leaf gave a shimmer, the feather took wing. The quill gave a glint, and the moss stayed tight, all stitched with the kindness that made it feel right. Birch gave a hoot with a beat and a bounce, while Bramble tapped rhythms with every small pounce. Tilly spun circles and squeaked out a tune. It wobbled and wiggled like wind in a spoon. Maple swished proudly, her tail full of cheer, each piece bouncing brightly for all friends to hear. The forest around them felt happy and light, as if it were dancing from morning to night. Maple spun round with a giggle and grin. Her tail twirled behind her like leaves in the wind. It might be, she laughed, even better than new. Fern gave a bow and said, all thanks to you. Birch flapped his wings with a flutter and clap, delighted to join in the forest's loud rap. They twirled and they swayed in a whirl of delight, their hearts full of warmth and their tails feeling light. A breeze gave a rustle and danced through the trees. It tickled the leaves with a fluttering tease. But Maple stood tall with her tail held up high. No stealing this time, wind, she said with a sigh. The leaf gave a shimmer, the feather a shake. The quill stayed in place, not a wobble or break. The moss gave a wiggle, then nestled in tight, and the forest around her just felt right. Fern gave a bow with a grin full of pride. He wrapped up her tail with his scarf nice and wide. It's guarded, he shouted, then slipped out of view. The scarf flopped right over and covered him too. He tumbled and giggled, a fox in a mess, while Maple just laughed in her leaf-patterned dress. The others joined in with a chuckle and cheer. It was the best laughter she'd heard all year. Birch gave a flap and leapt in to assist, but tripped on a root in the evening mist. He tumbled and landed, with feathers all spread, then blinked and declared, well, I bounced on my head. This root is ruder than a raccoon's tail. He brushed off his feathers and gave a soft wail. Maple just giggled, her cheeks turning red, and even the root gave a hum, someone said. I'll guard it, said Bramble, then puffed out his chest. His quills stood up straight. He was doing his best. I'm at tail night, he declared with a shout, while Maple bowed deeply and twirled all about. The others clapped loud with a cheer and a hoot. Fern gave a whistle and stomped with his boot. Bramble stood tall as they laughed at his might, the proudest and pokiest tail-guarding knight. Tilly climbed up on a moss-covered stump. She puffed out her chest and stood with a jump. A speech, she announced, with a twinkle-eyed grin. But halfway through, she forgot to begin. She squeaked and she chirped in a chipmunky way, until all her friends shouted, hip hip hooray! Maple rolled over, her giggles so wide, she laughed till she hiccuped and held her own side. Maple stood still, with a smile soft and wide. A warm pie of joy seemed to bake deep inside. She looked at her friends, each one shining and bright. Their laughter had filled her with featherlight light. The gifts on her tail made it twinkle and gleam, but they made her heart feel like part of a dream. The forest around them all shimmered and glowed, a patchwork of kindness that quietly showed. You all gave me pieces of you, Maple said. Her tail gave a flick as she lifted her head. That's the best fluff, not from bushes or shelves, but made from the hearts of my favorite selves. Fern gave a bow with a sweep and a grin. Birch gave a nod with a slow tuck-in chin. Bramble just beamed and Tilly squeaked bright, while Maple's tail swished in the cool, fading light. Fern gave a bow with a tip of his nose. Birch flapped his wings as he rose on his toes. Bramble spun round with a puff and a grin, and Tilly bounced twice with a squeak tucked in. The forest around them gave rustles and cheer, a rhythm of joy that rang bright and clear. Maple stood still as her tail gave a gleam. It shimmered and sparkled like part of a dream. The moon peeked out from a blanket of gray and spilled silver light where the friends came to stay. It shone on her tail like a soft glowing beam, and Maple swished slowly, the world like a dream. The leaf gave a shimmer, the quill caught the glow, the feather and moss swayed quiet and slow. The forest stood still in the hush of the night, while all of her friends watched the magical sight. "Happy Thanksgiving Eve," Birch said with a smile, his voice drifting gently through branches a while. Fern gave a howl with a twist and a cheer. Bramble just snorted, his happiest gear. Tilly let loose with some quick chipmunk squeaks. Maple laughed loud till she squeaked back in peaks. The forest around them gave rustles that weaved, as if it too whispered Thanksgiving Eve. Maple sat still in the soft lantern light, her patchwork tail glowing, cozy and bright. She traced every gift with a whisper and grin, the leaf, the feather, the moss tucked in. "The wind may have taken my tail fluff away, but it gave me my friends," she started to say. She smiled as the warmth gently bubbled inside, like tea in a cup she could never outstride. The lantern burned low with a comforting gleam, and Maple curled up in a cinnamon dream. Her friends found their corners and soft little beds, with blankets of moss tucked over their heads. No more tall tales or pancake-shaped jokes, just rustling leaves and the sighing of oaks. Her tail gave a swish, a slow, sleepy wave, and the hush of the forest was gentle and brave. The wind whispered low through the trees up above, a lullaby made out of friendship and love. Maple sighed softly, her smile tucked in tight, wrapped in her tail and the glow of the night. The forest lay still in a silvery gleam, while stars stitched the sky like a soft velvet seam. And there in the hush, not a worry remained, just the quiet of kindness, forever sustained.